All right, we're about to dive into a story that, on the surface, is about one single house in Los Angeles, but it quickly spirals into something so much bigger. A battle fought over property, sure, but also over the narrative and really the very idea of what resistance can look like. This quote right here, it pretty much captures the entire spirit of this story. It sets the tone perfectly for a conflict that just refuses to play by anyone else's rules. Because this is so much more than a simple real estate dispute. It's a war, and it's being fought with lawsuits, with data, and with avant-garde art, all centered on this one property on Ewing Street. So to really get what's going on, we need to meet the players. Okay, so every war has its opposing sides. Let's take a look at who is facing off on this very unique battlefield. So on one side, you have the residents, Eric Seidenglanz and Elishba Itura. They're avant-garde artists, and for them, the house is everything. It's their home. It's a cultural space. On the other side is the network. That's their term for a group of developers, lenders, and officials, allegedly led by the Shapiro family. For them, the house is just an asset, another property on a spreadsheet to be flicked for profit. It's a classic David versus Goliath setup. So what is this fight really about at its core? Well, it all boils down to a set of extremely serious fraud allegations. Let's break them down. And these charges are no joke. The residents are alleging a whole range of crimes. We're talking about everything from mortgage and appraisal fraud to secure loans to schemes designed to get around tenant protection laws. They also allege permit fraud, which enabled dangerous, illegal construction. And they say all of this was backed by a campaign of systematic harassment, including stalking and vandalism. Let's look closer at that alleged permit fraud, because the way they claim it worked is a wild piece of bureaucratic maneuvering. So step one, a legit permit application with the correct property number is denied, likely because of those tenant protections. Step two, a new application gets filed at a different city office, but this time using an old deleted property number. Step three, that fraudulent application gets approved, completely bypassing all the normal legal checks. And finally, with that fake permit in hand, the destructive illegal construction begins. And this wasn't just happening on paper. This alleged fraud, they claim, opened the door for things to get really ugly really fast. You can see the escalation here. April 2020, there's a break-in. By July, an alleged assault. Then they bring in tractors for illegal excavation, with no dust control right in the middle of the COVID lockdown. And get this, just a few days later, a city inspector reportedly shows up after being tipped off and then does nothing. So with all this pressure, you might think the fight would stay in the courtroom, but that's not what happened. The residents fought back with a completely unconventional strategy they call their arsenal of art. This line from their own writings says it all, doesn't it? This isn't your typical protest. For them, creativity, subversion, even the simple act of play, that itself becomes a revolutionary act. They call their movement the Seahorse Liberation Army. Now, this isn't some formal group with membership cards. It's more of a concept, a banner for their unique mix of art, legal strategy, and cognitive exploration. They actually frame the whole conflict as a fight for neuro-liberation, a struggle to free the mind from the rigid bureaucratic systems they feel are trying to crush them. And their arsenal was something else. I mean, they filed legal documents as actual performance art. They literally dragged a typewriter into the county recorder's office and called it a battering ram against bureaucracy. They transformed their house into a psychedelic jungle gym of sound and light. They documented everything. They even used high fashion in court, like a Karl Lagerfeld suit and a hijab, as their armor. Every single move was a statement. So you might be wondering, where do these ideas even come from? Well, to really get what they're doing, you have to look at the philosophy that's fueling their fight. A huge piece of the puzzle is this concept called psychogeography. It comes from an old art movement, and the basic idea is that your physical environment, your city, your street, directly impacts your emotions and behavior. The residents took this idea and ran with it, using it to design new maps for their own reality as a way to reclaim their space both physically and mentally. And this philosophy extends right into their legal stance. This quote explains their really radical take on adverse possession. Now, to most of us, that might just sound like squatting. But to them, it's about meticulously following the letter of the law, not breaking it, but walking that line perfectly for years. They see it as earning a legitimate claim to the land through what they call sweat equity.
So when you put it all together, you realize their fight was never just about winning a court case. It was about hijacking the entire narrative. It was about turning the legal system itself into a stage and transforming a nasty property dispute into a piece of performance art.
And this all brings us to the present day, to a chapter of the story that is still being written. This is an unfinished narrative. You see, the conflict has evolved. The main battlefield isn't the physical house anymore. Now it's the public record, that massive archive of evidence they compiled, and we're talking thousands of pages of city records, videos, and complaints. That has become their ultimate weapon. And they're using it in a very strategic, data-driven offensive. Step 1 was compiling the archive, connecting all the dots. Step 2 was to expose the whole alleged scheme by creating a fraud map. Step 3, they bundled all this evidence into prosecution packets and delivered them to the DA's Public Integrity Unit and the Attorney General's Housing Strike Force. And now, step 4 is enforcement. Every time a court order is ignored, they file a new motion, creating this recursive loop of legal pressure on the very system they're challenging. And all of this leaves us with one last powerful question that really gets to the heart of this whole story. When the system itself is the alleged crime scene, what does justice even look like?